Hey everyone, and welcome back to Scary Stories for a Rainy Night. I'm so glad you're here. As you know, we have a weird but wonderful mission to tell you terrifying tales that paradoxically help you relax and get a great night's sleep. And speaking of stories, I have some awesome news. I'm going to be live streaming the recording of brand new stories regularly, and I want you all to be there. It's going to be a ton of fun. So if you want to hang out for those live sessions and for more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Also, let me know in the comments if you're excited for the live streams. And don't forget to hit the like button to help me out. As always, I'm working on the ad situation to keep them to a minimum. I really appreciate you all. I hope you enjoyed tonight's video. Let's get into it. When you break up with someone, you expect to see them around town, maybe hear their name from mutual friends. What you don't expect is to hear them. Not in person, but in your car, through your laptop, in the dead of night through your phone's speaker. Ben didn't just haunt my life after I left him. He haunted the very airwaves around me. Ben and I were together for 2 years. On the surface, he was perfect, charming, brilliant, and incredibly attentive. He was a sound engineer, a genius with anything tech-related. He loved me, but his love felt like a cage. He needed to know where I was, what I was doing, who I was with. It wasn't overtly aggressive. It was subtle. Suffocating control disguised as care. The breakup was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I told him I needed space, that I needed to be my own person. He just smiled a sad, knowing smile and said, "You'll never be able to get my voice out of your head." I thought he was being poetic. I was wrong. The first week of freedom was euphoric. I reveled in the silence, in making my own choices. Then the weird stuff started. It was small at first, easy to dismiss. I was driving to work, and my Spotify, which was on a random shuffle, suddenly played our song. A few days later, I asked my smart home device for the weather, and after it answered, it added in its synthetic voice, "By the way, you look beautiful today, Maya." It was a phrase Ben used to say to me every single morning. It was a glitch, I told myself, a coincidence. The first undeniable sign that something was wrong happened a week later. It was 3 a.m. My phone, which was on silent, lit up with a call from a blocked number. Annoyed, I answered, expecting a wrong number. There was silence for a second, and then I heard a sound clip, crystal clear, of my own laughter. It was a recording he must have taken on our vacation to the beach last summer. 3 seconds of my pure, happy laughter, and then the line went dead. I sat there in the dark, my blood like ice water. The next morning, I called him, my voice shaking with rage. "Did you call me last night, Ben?" His voice on the other end was the picture of calm concern. "What? No, Maya, I was asleep. Are you okay? You sound really stressed. Maybe you should talk to someone." He was a master of gaslighting. He made me feel like I was the one who was unstable, like I was the one inventing things. He made me question my own sanity. And in the beginning, it worked. I hung up the phone, wondering if maybe I was just stressed, seeing patterns where there were none. That was exactly what he wanted me to think. The glitches became more frequent, more personal. I'd be working on my laptop, and a random audio file would play. A snippet of an old voicemail he left me, his voice telling me he was running late. My phone's calendar would pop up with a notification for movie night, an old recurring event I was sure I had deleted. He was curating my digital life, reinserting himself into the spaces he used to occupy. The past wasn't just a memory, it was an echo he could play on demand. I decided to take back control. I went on a digital cleansing spree. I changed every single password I had, email, social media, banking, everything. I wiped my phone and laptop, restoring them to factory settings. I got a new phone number and only gave it to my parents and my best friend. For one glorious week, there was silence. I felt like I could finally breathe again. I had cut the strings. Then, I was in my car, driving home from the grocery store. I had my new phone plugged in, listening to a podcast. Suddenly, the audio cut out. The car's Bluetooth display, which I had completely forgotten about, lit up. It read, "Now playing, in the car, April 12th. And then his voice filled my car, not from a phone call, but from the speakers themselves. It was a recording, a conversation we'd had months ago, in this very car. I could hear my own voice responding to him. It was a ghost, a perfect audio recreation of a moment I had forgotten, playing back in stunning clarity. I screamed and slammed the brakes, almost causing an accident. He had found a new way in. The stalking began to bleed into the physical world. I came home one evening to find a single white rose on my doorstep. No note, just the flower, the exact kind he used to bring me every Friday. It was a quiet, terrifying message. Your new passwords don't matter. Your new phone number doesn't matter. I can still get to you. I can still stand right where you live. I went to the police. I sat in a cold, sterile room and tried to explain. A police officer, a kind-faced woman, listened patiently. "So, he sent you a sound clip of you laughing, and he left a flower on your porch?" I nodded, feeling my story unravel into a pile of pathetic circumstantial evidence. "Ma'am," she said, her voice full of pity, "I understand that it's upsetting, but it's not illegal. Without a direct threat, there's nothing we can do." I left the station feeling more alone and helpless than ever before. The system couldn't protect me. I was completely on my own. My life shrank. I became a prisoner in my own apartment. I unplugged my smart devices. I put a piece of tape over my laptop camera. I stopped listening to music. Silence was the only safe place. But the feeling of being watched, of being listened to, was a constant presence. The ultimate violation happened on a Wednesday night. It was the moment the line between digital haunting and physical invasion was erased forever. I was taking a hot shower, the one place I felt truly alone. The steam filled the bathroom, fogging up the mirror. When I got out, I grabbed a towel and wiped a clear spot on the mirror to see my reflection, and my heart stopped. Written in the condensation, in a perfect imitation of my own handwriting, were 3 words: I miss this. I didn't even scream. A cold animal terror took over. I threw on clothes, grabbed my keys and my purse, and ran out of my apartment. I drove to my friend Sarah's house, a hysterical, sobbing wreck. He had been in my apartment. He had been in my bathroom. He had been there just moments before. I stayed with Sarah for the next few days, too terrified to go back to my own place. I thought I would be safe there. But Ben wasn't tied to a location. He was a virus tied to me. The first night at Sarah's, we were watching a movie on her smart TV. My phone, which had automatically connected to her Wi-Fi, was on the coffee table. Suddenly, the movie stopped. The screen went black. Then the Netflix app opened, navigated to my profile, and started playing the cheesy sci-fi show that Ben and I used to binge watch together. Sarah just stared at me, her eyes wide with horror. He could follow me. That's when I finally understood the terrifying extent of it. When we were together, he had helped set up all my devices. He had installed security software on my phone. He wasn't hacking me from the outside. He had built the back doors himself years ago. He had a God key to my entire digital life, and I had handed it to him with a smile. The haunting wasn't a series of clever tricks. It was a system of total control he had designed from the very beginning. I knew I couldn't run to another friend's house. I couldn't go to my parents. He would just follow me, a digital plague infecting every network I touched. I had to disappear. Not just move, but erase myself. I made a plan. I went to an electronics store and paid cash for a cheap, prepaid flip phone. No GPS, no Wi-Fi, no apps. A ghost phone. I left my smartphone and laptop at Sarah's apartment, telling her to wipe them and then destroy them. I went to my bank and withdrew as much cash as I could. I packed a single bag, got in my car, and drove. I checked into a cheap, run-down motel 100 miles away, paying in cash under a fake name. I was completely off the grid. No digital footprint, no connections, no Ben. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. In the dingy motel room, I turned on the old tube television. It was playing a fuzzy black and white movie. The static was almost comforting. I lay back on the lumpy bed and closed my eyes. Suddenly, the movie on the TV cut out. The screen went to static, then to black. A new image appeared. It was a video, clearly shot on a phone. It was a video of me, sleeping. It was an intimate, close-up shot, one he must have taken when we were still together. A memory I had completely forgotten. My heart seized in my chest, and then a small white text watermark appeared in the bottom corner of the TV screen. It was a date. The date was from the previous night when I had been sleeping at Sarah's house. The hope I'd felt moments before shattered into a million pieces. The technology wasn't the method. It was a distraction. It was a magic trick to keep me looking at the screens while his real eyes were on me the whole time. He was physically watching me. He had always been physically watching me. It's been a year. I live a life you wouldn't recognize. I have a different name. I live in a different state. I work a cash-only job as a waitress. I have no phone, no computer, no bank account. I have no friends. I have erased myself, deleted every trace of the woman I used to be, because that's the only way to escape him. Most days, I almost feel safe. But yesterday, I was at a laundromat. A song came on the cheap, tinny overhead radio. It was our song. I froze, my hands buried in a pile of warm laundry. I looked up. Across the room, a man I'd never seen before was looking at me. He wasn't menacing. He just gave me a small, knowing smile, then looked down at his phone. A second later, a cheap burner phone, the one I keep in my pocket for emergencies, a number only my boss has, buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. It was a single audio file. My hands shaking, I played it. It was Ben's voice, a soft, intimate whisper I remembered from the dead of night, so close it felt like he was breathing on my neck. And all it said was, "Found you." When Sarah and I broke up, she took all her things in one afternoon. At least, that's what I thought. It took me a week to realize she wasn't taking things from the apartment. She was leaving little pieces of herself behind. Trophies, markers, reminders that the space I thought was finally mine was still and would always be hers. Breaking up with Sarah was like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. She was an artist, brilliant, passionate, and intense in a way that was intoxicating at first and then terrifying later. Her love wasn't a partnership, it was a possession. When I finally ended it after a year, the relief was so profound it made me dizzy. The breakup was surprisingly calm. She just looked at me with her dark, unblinking eyes and said, "You'll never really be able to get rid of me, Alex." Then she packed her bags and was gone. For the first few days, I reveled in the emptiness of the apartment. It was finally mine. But then I started noticing things, small, deniable things at first. I changed the bed sheets, and the next morning I found a single long strand of her dark hair on my pillow. I cleaned out the bathroom cabinet, and a week later I found the cap to her specific expensive brand of toothpaste tucked away behind the toilet. I told myself I'd just missed them. The mind plays tricks on you after a breakup. Then came the scent, her perfume. It was a cloying, heavy jasmine scent that she wore every single day. I'd walk into the living room and catch a faint whiff of it, like she had just been there. I'd open my closet and the scent would be clinging to my clothes. I went on a cleansing rampage, throwing out every candle, every bar of soap, every piece of fabric she had ever touched. I aired out the apartment for a whole weekend, but the ghost of her perfume remained, coming and going with no rhyme or reason, a constant, invisible reminder of her presence. The denial shattered completely about 2 weeks after the breakup. I was getting dressed for work, pulling a pair of socks from my drawer. My fingers brushed against something small and lumpy, tucked away in the back corner. I pulled it out. It was a small, crude doll, no bigger than my thumb. It was made from scraps of one of my old discarded t-shirts, bound together with twine, and for the hair, woven into the twine at the top, was a small clipping of my own hair from the electric razor I used. It was a tiny, grotesque effigy of me. This wasn't something I had missed. This was new. This was placed here. She had been in my apartment. She had been in my room. She still had a key. I left work immediately and had every lock on my doors and windows changed that afternoon. Changing the locks felt like a victory. I had re-established my boundaries, built a fortress. For about a week, it seemed to work. The strange findings stopped. The phantom scent of jasmine faded. I started to feel like myself again, like maybe the nightmare was finally over. The feeling of being the sole master of my own space was intoxicating. The illusion was shattered on a cold Monday morning. I walked out to my car in the apartment's parking garage. The moment I opened the car door, the scent hit me like a physical blow. That same heavy, sweet jasmine perfume trapped in the enclosed space of my car. My heart hammered against my ribs. And on the passenger seat, placed perfectly in the center, was another one of her little art projects. It was a small bird's nest, meticulously woven from the shredded pieces of a paper road map, and nestled in the center of the nest, like a single precious egg, was my spare car key, a key I thought I had lost months ago. She had been in my car, my locked car, in a secure parking garage. How? The question was a screaming siren in my head. The walls of my fortress meant nothing. She could get to me anywhere. The invasion escalated. Her territory expanded from my home to my work. I'm a software developer at a small tech firm. You need a key card to get into the building, and another one to get onto our floor. One morning I came in and found a single dead jasmine flower lying on my keyboard. My coffee mug had been moved from the right side of my monitor to the left. A small, insignificant change that was a screaming declaration of her power. I can get in anywhere. I can touch your things. Nothing is safe from me. I was falling apart. I tried to contact her. Her phone number was disconnected. I drove by her old apartment. The new tenants were already moving in. I reached out to our few mutual friends. No one had seen or heard from her since the day we broke up. It was like she had completely vanished from her own life, dedicating every ounce of her energy and focus to systematically dismantling mine. She had become a ghost to the world, but a god in mine. I filed a police report, my voice shaking as I tried to explain the dolls, the scent, the flower. The officer was polite, but I could see the look in his eyes. It's just a messy breakup. He's being dramatic. Without a forced entry, without a direct threat, he said, it was just a series of strange occurrences. He gave me a pamphlet on restraining orders and sent me on my way. I felt helpless, and worse, I felt like no one would ever believe me. My life became a series of paranoid rituals. I bought new, high-security locks for my apartment, the kind with uncopyable keys. I installed a camera in my living room. I checked my car every single morning before I got in. I lived in a constant state of high alert, always sniffing the air for that damned perfume, always checking my pockets, my drawers, my office for her next little souvenir. I started seeing her, or at least I thought I did. A flash of her distinctive red coat in a crowd, but when I'd whip my head around, it was just a stranger. A woman with the same dark hair, sitting in a coffee shop across the street from my work, but when I'd look again, the chair would be empty. My mind was turning on me, manufacturing her presence everywhere. I was becoming the obsessed one. The lines were blurring, and I think that was her goal all along. I tried to move on. I met someone new. Her name was Megan, and she was the opposite of Sarah. Calm, simple, and blessedly normal. After a few weeks, I finally got the courage to invite her back to my apartment. I was terrified, but also determined not to let Sarah's ghost control my future. We had a wonderful evening. It felt normal. It felt safe. Megan went to use the bathroom. She was in there for a little longer than usual. When she came out, her face was pale, her eyes wide with a fear and confusion that I knew all too well. "Alex," she said, her voice a shaky whisper. Who was the girl in the picture?" "What picture?" I asked, my blood turning to ice. "In the medicine cabinet," she said, pointing. "Tucked behind the box of bandages." My legs felt like lead as I walked to the bathroom. I opened the mirrored cabinet. I moved the bandages, and there it was, a small, folded piece of photo paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a photograph, a recent one, taken in the dark. It was a picture of me and Megan asleep in my bed. The photo was taken from the foot of the bed, from inside my room. I flipped it over. In Sarah's elegant, artistic handwriting, a single sentence was scrawled. "Her hair smells like vanilla. It's a nice change." Megan left that night, rightfully terrified. She never spoke to me again. I was alone again, but this time the isolation felt permanent. The photo was the final violation. It wasn't about the scent or the dolls or the key. It was about her being there, standing in the dark of my bedroom, watching me sleep next to someone else, breathing our air. The jealousy was the engine, and the violation was the art. I couldn't live like that anymore. I couldn't be the victim, waiting for her next move. I had to confront her. I had to end it. I knew she'd be back. The photograph wasn't an ending. It was an invitation, a challenge. So I set a trap. I remembered something she'd told me once, that she was a rock climber in college. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, but the old rusted fire escape ran right past my bedroom window. The window lock was old and flimsy. I had never thought about it before. It had to be how she was getting in. The next night, I made it look like I was asleep. I put a pile of pillows under the covers, and I waited, sitting in the pitch black of my living room, clutching the heaviest flashlight I owned. I waited for hours, my heart a slow, heavy drum in the silence. Just after 3 a.m., I saw it, a shadow moving with a silent, spider-like grace up the fire escape. A moment later, my bedroom window slid open with a barely audible groan. A slim figure, dressed all in black, slipped into my apartment. I flicked on the flashlight, the powerful beam catching her in the center of the room. It was Sarah. She looked different, thinner, her hair wild, her eyes holding a feral, obsessive gleam. But she didn't scream. She didn't even look surprised. She just smiled, a calm, serene smile. "I knew you were waiting for me," she whispered. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding a small, intricately carved wooden heart, painted a deep, dark red. "It's almost finished, my masterpiece. I just needed one last thing." She took a step closer, her eyes fixed on my face. "I needed a real piece of you. I needed to capture your fear." In that moment, I finally understood. The entire campaign of terror, the dolls, the flowers, the perfume, the photo, it wasn't just random stalking. It was an artistic process. She had been gathering materials, collecting my emotional reactions like pigments for a painting. I wasn't her ex-boyfriend. I was her muse, and this was the final sitting. I yelled. I charged her. She dropped the wooden heart and scrambled out the window, disappearing into the night. The police came. This time, with a witness and a clear point of entry, they took it seriously. They found her new studio, an abandoned warehouse across town. The place was a shrine to me. Dozens of life-sized effigies made from my stolen clothes, my hair, things from my trash, all posed in scenes from our relationship, her masterpiece. But Sarah was gone. She had vanished again, leaving only her art behind. When my girlfriend, Emily, and I moved in together, we were excited to start our new life. The only problem was her ex, David. She told me he was dangerous, but I didn't really believe her. Not at first. How could I? He was the nicest, most charming guy you'd ever meet, and that was the most terrifying thing about him. Emily and I found the perfect little house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It was a fresh start for both of us, but especially for her. Her last relationship with a guy named David had ended badly about a year before we met. She didn't talk about it much, but when she did, her words were laced with a deep, quiet fear. She called him controlling, manipulative, and a master of making you feel crazy. To me, it just seemed like a standard bad breakup. I had no idea what she was truly talking about. We were blissfully happy for the first month. We painted the walls, we bought a new couch, we started to build a life. The neighbors were all friendly, welcoming us to the street. Then the house across from us went up for sale, and 2 weeks later, a moving truck pulled up. I was outside mowing the lawn when he first walked over. He was handsome, athletic, with a bright, confident smile. "Hey there," he said, extending a hand. "Looks like we're going to be neighbors. I'm David." My blood went cold. It couldn't be. But it was. He looked at me, then glanced over at our house, where Emily was visible through the window. "I just want you to know," he said, his voice the picture of sincerity, I have no hard feelings. I wish you both the absolute best. Emily is a wonderful woman. She deserves to be happy." He was so charming, so reasonable, that for a second I was the one who felt like a jerk for being suspicious. When I told Emily, she almost had a panic attack. "We have to move, Tom. We have to leave now." I tried to calm her down. "Em, what's he going to do? It's just a coincidence. He seems nice." The word nice felt like a betrayal as soon as I said it. He had already started his game, and I was his first unwitting pawn. The gaslighting began that weekend at the neighborhood barbecue. David was the life of the party. He knew everyone's name. He was great with the kids. He told funny stories. Everyone loved him. I saw him talking to our next-door neighbor, a sweet older woman named Mary. Later, Mary came over to me. "That David is just a sweetheart," she said. "He told me he's still so worried about Emily. He said she had a really hard time after their breakup, became very unstable. It's good that she has you to look after her." The narrative was already being written, and we were the villains. David's presence was a constant, low-grade fever. He never did anything overtly threatening. That was his genius. He was just there, always. If I left for work in the morning, he'd be out getting his mail, giving me a friendly wave. If Emily came home with groceries, he'd be watering his lawn, offering to help her carry them in. His observation wasn't a secret. It was a public performance of being the perfect neighbor, and it was driving us insane. He weaponized the community against us. He joined the neighborhood watch committee, which was a laughably perfect move. Now he had an excuse to slowly cruise past our house at all hours of the night. He befriended everyone around us, weaving his version of the story into casual conversation. His concern for Emily's fragile state, his hope that she was getting the help she needs. The small cuts began. We got a formal, anonymous complaint from the Homeowners Association about our recycling bin being left out an hour too long. A few days later, we got a visit from Animal Control, responding to a report about a neglected, constantly barking dog. We didn't own a dog. Each incident was a tiny, deniable paper cut. We couldn't prove any of it was him, but we knew. He was turning our new, friendly neighborhood into a hostile surveillance network. Our neighbors' friendly waves started to be replaced by looks of suspicion and pity. The breaking point for me came when I decided to confront him. I was tired of living in this quiet, polite terror. I walked across the street and rang his doorbell. He answered with a calm, welcoming smile and invited me in. His house was immaculate. "Tom, I'm glad you came over," he said, his voice full of practiced sincerity. "I've been wanting to talk to you. I'm worried." "I'm worried?" I asked, incredulous. "About Emily," he said, his face a mask of concern. "I know how she can get. She did this with me, too. The paranoia, pushing people away, making up stories. I'm not the enemy here. I'm just a guy who still cares and wants to make sure the woman I once loved is safe, and that you are too." He had twisted reality so completely that for a terrifying moment, in his clean, rational living room, I almost believed him. I left his house more confused and terrified than ever before. He was untouchable. We were on our own, and we knew it. We need proof, I told Emily, something undeniable. We spent a week's savings on a high-end security camera system, installing cameras that covered our front door, our backyard, and our driveway. The feeling of taking action, of finally having an objective witness, was a small relief. The day after we installed the cameras, we woke up to find the tires on my car slashed, all 4 of them. Got him, I said, a grim satisfaction rising in me. I ran to the computer to check the security footage from the night before, and my heart sank. The footage was gone. There was a 2-hour gap in the recording, from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. The system log showed a power failure, even though none of the clocks in our house were blinking. He had found a way to disable it remotely. David was the first person to come over that morning, holding a cup of coffee, an expression of shock and sympathy on his face. "My God, what happened? Is there anything I can do? I have a spare jack in my garage." He was the perfect, concerned neighbor. That was the last straw. We went to the police. We sat in the station for 2 hours, laying everything out. The history, the constant watching, the complaints, the slashed tires, the impossible camera failure. The officer took our report, but his expression was doubtful. "We'll look into it, but without any direct evidence." The next day, 2 different police officers showed up at our door. They weren't there to give us an update. They were there to serve Emily with a temporary restraining order. My mind couldn't process it. "What is this?" I stammered. "We received a complaint from your neighbor, David Miller," the officer said, refusing to make eye contact. "He has evidence of harassment. He's concerned for his safety." David had played his masterpiece. He had filed the order against her. He had printed out emails that he had clearly faked, filled with desperate, pleading language, all from an account that looked like hers. He had a signed statement from our neighbor Mary, who swore she had witnessed Ms. Vance screaming threats at Mr. Miller on his own property. He had taken our every move, our every desperate attempt to fight back, and twisted it into a perfect narrative where she was a dangerous, obsessed ex and he was the terrified victim. And the law believed him. We were legally forbidden from going near or even speaking to our own stalker. We were pariahs. The restraining order was the final nail in the coffin. Our neighbors, who now saw us as the source of the neighborhood's drama, would cross the street to avoid us. We were trapped in our house, but now the feeling of being watched came from every window on the block. David had successfully turned the entire neighborhood into his own personal army of spies. We had to leave. We couldn't live like this. We put the house on the market, ready to take a huge financial loss just to escape. The day of our first open house, our real estate agent told us to be gone for the afternoon so she could show the property. We packed a small bag and drove to a park, sitting on a bench in a numb, defeated silence for hours. Around 4 p.m., our agent called my phone. Her voice was shaking. "Tom," she said, "you and Emily need to get back here right now. Something's happened at the house." We raced back, imagining a fire, a break-in, 1,000 horrible things. We pulled up to see our agent and 2 police cars outside our house. "What happened?" I yelled, running up to her. "It's not damaged," she said, her eyes wide. "It's redecorated." She led us inside. I will never forget the sight for as long as I live. The house was no longer ours. In our living room, where our family photos had been, there were now large, professionally framed pictures of David and Emily smiling on vacation from years ago. On our television, a digital photo frame was cycling through hundreds of pictures of their old life together. In our kitchen, a set of coffee mugs with their initials on them were sitting on the counter. He had gone through our bedroom. Our clothes had been taken out of the closet and replaced with his. His cologne hung heavy in the air. He hadn't broken a single thing. He hadn't stolen anything. He had meticulously and systematically erased us and reinserted himself into the home. He had turned our house into a bizarre, living shrine to the relationship Emily had fled. It was his final, brilliant, insane move. A message to us and to any potential buyers. This house is mine. She is mine. You were never really here. We sold the house to a developer for a catastrophic loss just to make it go away. We moved to an anonymous, high-rise apartment building in the city, a place with security guards and 100 other nameless faces. We thought we had finally escaped. We started to heal. Then, last week, there was a knock on our door. I opened it to find a cheerful woman holding a welcome basket. "Hi," she said brightly. "I'm from the building's welcome committee. My husband and I live just down the hall. He's the one who actually recommended this place when he heard you were looking. He said you were old friends of his from his last neighborhood." She smiled. "David told us to make sure you felt right at home."